The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the show. A little bit of a scramble to get started on time, Lewis, today. As you know, I was rear-ended on the way into the studio today. I will have full details and repercussions on tomorrow's bonus show.
Thank you.
It's quite a story, I must say.
I drove by it.
Yeah, that's right. Lewis drives by and he's just looking over, grinning or something. I don't know what you were doing.
I was grinning.
Yeah, he was grinning. So anyway, We'll have all the details tomorrow and all the legal repercussions, which they aren't insignificant, Lewis. I must say, tomorrow's bonus show. If there's ever been a better incentive to sign up, I can't think of one. Let's talk about the 2013 State of the Union address. We're going to get into the content. We're going to analyze this thing piece by piece. We're going to look at everything. But first, some of the casual observations. No Clarence Thomas, no Samuel Alito, no Scalia. Not unusual, right, Natan, for all of the justices not to be there, but I think Scalia had like another speech he was doing for money that night.
Well, yeah, although he probably decided not to go to the State of the Union well before he scheduled that appearance.
Right.
I mean, I think, not all justices go, but it's certainly no coincidence, I don't think, that the three most conservative justices aren't showing up.
I would have liked to see Thomas there, particularly, Lewis. I really would have liked to see his reactions.
Yeah, if, I don't know if they'd be anything like Alito's, but...
Right, no. Probably not.
Yeah.
Joe Biden was putting on a hell of a show. He was taking his glasses on, taking them off, rubbing his eyes, folding papers, unfolding papers, writing notes down, laughing when nobody else was doing anything. I was listening to Obama, but watching Biden, Natan, because he was putting on an incredible show.
Yeah, he seemed like he just wanted to get up and dance and just didn't know what to do with himself. So he kept on like pulling out little pieces of paper and writing on them for like a split second.
Yeah.
And then putting them back in his coat. It was a good show.
It was a very good show. And the funniest thing overall was watching the Republicans unsure about whether they should be clapping about certain things and kind of like looking around and seeing, is everybody else clapping? It was like they couldn't think for themselves. It was groupthink, but it was really poorly executed groupthink, Lewis, where they couldn't figure out, what is our position on this?
Yeah. Semi-awkward. I mean, you should be able to know exactly. I mean, I guess the thing to do would just be to look at Boehner, right? I mean, try and gauge his reaction.
And you would have known you don't clap for Violence Against Women Act. You don't clap about voting for gun control, gun legislation. You don't clap about the $9 minimum wage, but we'll get to all that. Let's first start with the introduction of President Obama yesterday at the 2013 State of the Union. Start with the introduction of President Obama yesterday at the 2013 State of the Union.
David, I think you have some computer issues.
I don't think so. Am I having issues?
Yeah, you are.
It seems unclear to me what exactly
you seem to be playing the stream while playing the video.
Those issues are. Let's get, Lewis, if we may, let's get to the very beginning. President Obama being introduced.
Please.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
Very, very polite. Everybody kind of excited to see the president. And then we got into the topic. So let's get into this and go through it as best we can. Huge focus on economy, middle class, jobs. And President Obama making the case, we've already made up about half of the we've made half of the deficit reduction that we determined we wanted to make from tax breaks and cuts. We need to stop the automatic cuts that are forthcoming as part of the sequester on March 1st. We need to do something else. And in talking about jobs, one aspect I liked, there were a lot of things I didn't like, but one thing I liked was a big difference with the Republican Party right now. President Obama conveyed the impression that he has ideas for creating jobs and reviving the economy instead of just talking about the deficit and reducing the deficit as a kind of completely disconnected aspect of the economy. He has an idea for let's create jobs, let's stimulate certain industries, and let's actually grow the economy, which I thought, Natan, was a very welcome change from what we've been hearing from the Republican Party.
Absolutely. I mean, we're going to get into whether any of these things are likely to happen,
right,
which is a totally separate story.
Yeah. And one thing I did not like when talking about jobs in the economy was President Obama speaking very negatively about special interest tax breaks and wanting to eliminate them. The reality is, in the last few days, he has actually offered some special interest tax breaks. He offered $150 million. This is the Advanced Energy Manufacturing Tax Credits for clean energy and energy efficiency. And I agree with this in principle. The problem is the credits have gone in huge amounts, 8 figures in some cases, to the most politically connected companies, including Cree, GE, and Siemens. If they're doing this work, that's great. But it's the same circle of the companies that support him end up getting the credits, and I just don't like that at its core.
Right. I mean, one could argue that these are the companies that have the resources to do what needs to be done in that department. But still, that connection is a little unsettling.
It is. And then mentioning gay rights right away, he mentioned doesn't matter who you love in the first few minutes. I thought that was good. At one point mentioning equal benefits for all military families. I support that. John Boehner doesn't clap. John Boehner doesn't even move when that's mentioned. Then he got into climate change and science, talking about self-healing power grids. I think this is the first time in a State of the Union address we've heard the term human genome, Lewis. I was very interested in hearing that. But then I said, wait a second. President Obama is talking about futuristic sounding stuff, science and investigations to a place that's basically half filled with Republicans who are living in the 1850s, or if we're lucky in the 1950s at best. Bringing up science is just going to confuse them.
Right. And what was the reaction? I mean, did they...
It was very muted. Yeah.
Right.
It seemed they didn't know what he was talking about.
Well, I mean, it's good to hear from our perspective. I mean, it's good that the president acknowledges that there is this thing called science.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people in the country need to hear that.
The one concern on the science and climate change stuff was President Obama using the term market-based solutions to climate change. That concerns me because I believe it leads back to drilling in the Arctic, Natan, as part of whatever solution he's proposing.
You know, I wouldn't mind drilling in the Arctic in the short term as part of energy independence for the U.S. if in the medium and long term there was an aggressive push for new technologies into an eventual alternative energy market. I
would only be okay with that, Lewis, if it was written in black and white before any Arctic drilling starts, that it ends soon and how it ends and when it ends, and that's it. It ends full stop. That's the only way I would even consider wanting something like that.
Things that are in writing, that doesn't mean that that's
so
going
maybe
to
even
hold on.
That isn't worth that much.
I'm against Arctic drilling because once it starts, it's not going to stop until all of those resources are depleted.
I'm against it as well. But what I'm saying is the only way where I would even be open to the idea would be if it was very short term, very limited, and with a specific end date. And as Lewis says, that can be circumvented. On education, President Obama saying preschool for everybody. Republicans don't want that. They didn't clap, and they really don't want that because the earlier education starts for children, the more likely it is that they're going to realize people like Sean Hannity and Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh and Sarah Palin make absolutely no sense. That's not what the Republican Party wants.
They want less education.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, overall, a lot of suggestions here that involve new spending, but President Obama doesn't want the automatic cuts. This will only work if the economy really does grow, and we need to figure out if that's going to happen. Immigration and border security. President Obama talked about more boots at the border and a path to citizenship. Path to citizenship is interesting. Republicans kind of oppose it, except they favor it when it's not President Obama proposing it, right? So if we look at polls, Republicans are actually in favor of a path to citizenship for individuals who came to this country illegally, unless it's President Obama proposing it. Total hypocrisy, double standard on that. And so then we got into gun control reform and President Obama talking about gun control, saying we need a vote. That was probably one of the most rousing moments of the State of the Union. Let's take a listen to that, Lewis.
Graduations, anniversaries have been stolen from our lives by a bullet from a gun. More than 1,000. One of those we lost was a young girl named Hadiya Pendleton. She was 15 years old. She loved fig Newtons and lip gloss. She was a majorette. She was so good to her friends, they all thought they were her best friend. Just 3 weeks ago, she was here in Washington with her classmates, performing for her country at my inauguration. And a week later, she was shot and killed in a Chicago park after school.
Her parents were there. And again, we did not see much excitement from Republicans about even getting a vote. And really, as President Obama said, they deserve a vote. We deserve way more than a vote on the gun violence situation, as we've been talking about, but Republicans apparently not even into that. President Obama talking about women's equal pay, the Paycheck Fairness Act, talking about raising the minimum wage to $9 an hour. A lot of Republicans didn't like that. We're going to get into that more in the second segment, very extensively into the minimum wage thing. Put his foot down on no nuclear weapon for Iran, period. And he talked also about cyber attacks and cyber warfare, which I actually liked the inclusion of this because this is, we're going to have a lot of criticisms. But between mentioning all of the specific science stuff, including mapping the human genome and talking about cyber warfare so specifically, this is a new paradigm for the presidency, in my view. Let's take a listen.
Also face the rapidly growing threat from cyber attacks. Now, we know hackers steal people's identities and infiltrate private emails. We know foreign countries and companies swipe our corporate secrets.
And again, this was something that got some applause from both sides, really. So the most cheered moment in this entire State of the Union was what? When President Obama said, this country has the best, biggest military, cheerleading about the military. And everybody loved it. It was just incredible. And it was kind of a sad moment for me, Lewis, because is it really the situation in this country where the only issue where both parties can come together this forcefully with this level of excitement is on having the biggest, best military? There's got to be something else. There has to be something else. And there wasn't in this speech.
Right. I think we're pretty far from that. I mean, I think the only thing that could have received that kind of response would be if President Obama said, well, we solved the deficit. We solved every economic problem we have. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
No, it's not.
No.
So let's get to, let's rate this performance overall, okay? Natan, let's please put up my scorecard for this. I looked at this on 6 different levels, okay? Number 1 was, how good are the ideas that President Obama is presenting? This is completely separate from how likely are they to pass, or are they new ideas, or what? Just how good are the ideas? I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. As usual, I am disappointed that President Obama doesn't start his proposals for a more progressive point of view. So I give that a 6.5 out of 10. Novelty. Did we hear new stuff, or was this speech mostly stuff we've already heard before? I gave this a 4 out of 10. I don't think we heard very much new stuff. It was relatively predictable, but it was well delivered, and I'll get to that. Is President Obama addressing all of the important issues? I think that the answer is yes, in the sense that he touched on just about everything, right? He talked about drones, immigration, education, war, so many things. So he did hit those. So in that sense, I give it an 8 out of 10. But he didn't really address them in the way, with the depth and in the way I would have liked to see. So that's why I have it as an 8 with /5. It's kind of a 5 out of 10 in how he did it, but he did get himself on the record on all of these issues. You with me so far, Lewis?
Yes, I think you complicated that a little too much.
Listen, it's a nuanced scorecard. Excuse me. I mean, this is not Fox News.
We're issuing 2 different scores for one thing.
On delivery quality, how good was the delivery? 8.5 out of 10, 8 out of 10. That's last night I gave it an 8.5. I've kind of brought it back down to an 8. President Obama is always very good in his delivery, and the end was particularly good. And then, how well did he show willingness to compromise with the Republican Party, which really kind of gets at the practicality of the proposals? I gave it a 4 because we know from the first term, Republicans aren't going to compromise with him. But I actually think a 4 out of 10, I think it's good. I don't think we need at this point President Obama trying to play the compromise game because it didn't work. It doesn't work. That's not the way to go. I'm glad that he only had a 4 out of 10 on that. I would have loved for it to be a 2 out of 10.
All right. Seems reasonable.
Okay, so those are my grades. Natan, what's your evaluation of my evaluation?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of against the whole idea of giving grades to speeches like this, but I will say that I think the best thing that came out of the speech was that Obama was essentially ridiculing and roasting Congress for not conducting business in such a way as to at least put to a vote things that have broad over 50% consensus in the country. And the mentions of science were key, I think. The idea that we need to start talking about not rejecting the conclusions of science and putting that as part of what we discuss when we talk about what to do.
So overall, Lewis, okay ideas, didn't hear anything new, really skipped over real conversation about a lot of important issues, including foreign policy, delivered it well, and he seems to not really care too much about what Republicans are thinking.
Run-of-the-mill State of the Union speech.
You think so? But we're very well delivered, I think.
Oh, of course, as always with Obama. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about the responses. Do I care about Rand Paul's Tea Party response? Absolutely not. Do I care about Marco Rubio's response for the Republican Party? Absolutely not, although I am interested in a couple aspects of it. One is a very disappointing aspect, which is that Marco Rubio was selected by the Republicans very clearly to try to appeal to Hispanic voters, which reasonable Republicans know they need to do. The problem is that even though he was there to appeal to Hispanics, Marco Rubio yesterday voted no on the Violence Against Women Act. You need women too, and it's just the Republican men who voted against that, and we're going to talk about that more later. What a disaster. And then just a funny moment. He found himself parched during his response speech, needed to quench his thirst. I'd be having dry mouth too if I went up in front of the country and had to read such garbage. I really would. And let's just take a quick look at that, at his dry mouth incident, which turned into a commercial for Poland Springs. Take a look at this.
Frustrated me more than false choices like the one the president laid out tonight.
Right.
The choice isn't just between big government or big business.
This is just funny. It's really not a big deal. This has happened to me during the show where I start getting a tickle in my throat. And unless I get some water, it gets pretty bad. The funny part of this is when you overhear Wolf Blitzer on the CNN feed saying, "Oh no," or something like "uh-oh" when he starts reaching for the water. We have that separate audio. Let's take a listen to that, Lewis.
Nothing has frustrated me more than false choices like the one the president laid out tonight. The choice isn't just between big government or big business.
So there's Wolf Blitzer's moment there. Uh-oh. And it was kind of an uh-oh. It was funny, but listen, there is so much disaster going on with Marco Rubio and the Republican Party that him having to drink water is the least of my concerns.
It was so awkward, though.
It was very awkward and very funny.
You
So
should have just
awkward.
had one of those bladders, that hikers carry around, and just had easy access.
Yeah, or if he had one of those things where like you have bottles in the hat and a straw comes down and you can drink out of it.
That certainly would have fit the theme of the speech a bit better.
Yeah, he responded to a speech that Obama didn't give.
Right.
That was basically my analysis. He made great comebacks to a speech that nobody gave.
Yeah. It was a load of crap.
All right, let's take a break. On today's bonus show, a lot of great stories, including no fracking in Germany, new energy meters allegedly making some people sick. Is there any scientific validity to that? And also the heart attack grill spokesman dies of a heart attack. Is it a Darwin Award? Is it ironic? Is it just sad? We'll take a break. Get the bonus show, davidpakman.com/membership. Back after this with plenty more.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
If you use Amazon.com to do any online shopping, please first go to our website, davidpakman.com. Click on the black banner on the right side of the website, which takes you to Amazon, and then do your shopping. You'll be helping to support the show because Amazon will send us a 7% commission. A lot of people doing that with thousands of items a month purchased from Amazon.com. You can also become a member at davidpakman.com/membership, made possible in part by liberalbias.com, which shows you how to unskew those uncomfortable facts so that they'll fit nicely into the conservative worldview. Learn all the ways to unskew reality, a liberal reality, at liberalbias.com. Today's new member of the day, Patricia Westbrook. Patricia Westbrook is an incredibly valued member of the David Pakman Show, as is every member, the number one way that this show is funded, Lewis. Congratulations.
Indeed. Yep.
Let's follow up quickly about former LAPD officer Christopher Dorner. His driver's license was found with charred human remains presumed to belong to Dorner in a cabin where the former LAPD officer was hiding. Authorities are saying it's going to take a couple of days or maybe even weeks to positively identify the body. It was found inside a burned-out cabin near Big Bear Lake. They don't believe he took any hostages. He never came out of the cabin before it was set on fire. He was wanted for 3 killings, as we've discussed on the program, and allegedly murdered a sheriff's deputy during the latest shootout, which happened yesterday. Now, The wallet was found. It was a California driver's license with the name Christopher Dorner. It was inside the cabin. The conspiracy theories are already starting, including that he actually left, that there were some footprints leading to a horse barn, and presumably he got on a horse and galloped away, that it wasn't Christopher Dorner in the first place, that he tied someone up with his wallet and then escaped, and that now he's, I don't know, in Bali or something. Who knows where he is? So the conspiracy theories are floating right away. He's almost become kind of like a cult hero, because a lot of people sympathize with the reasons why from his manifesto he was so angry with the LAPD. And if those reasons are accurate, certainly they are cause for concern, and we know about corruption within the Los Angeles Police Department. However, he went on a shooting spree, and I just don't think that, regardless of his gripes, can we really make the argument that this is going to lead to solutions? Let's say you're not a pacifist who believes that there is never a place for violence, right? Let's think about it pragmatically. You're not against the violence per se, as long as it accomplishes something. I don't know that this is really going to accomplish anything. That's just my view. At the bottom line, he went on a murderous rampage, and period, full stop.
Yeah. Clearly, I think there are better ways to go about solving your problems with your employer. But the cops were the ones who started the fire. The cops intentionally set the cabin on fire.
The last I read was that it was unclear how or why the fire was started.
Yeah, there's 9/11, or there's audio of the cops shouting.
911 audio, yeah.
I don't even know if it's 911 audio, but shouting, burn it down, we're going ahead with the burn plan or whatever. And it's that came out today, I believe.
Natan, what do you think about this guy becoming almost like a cult hero in some circles?
Well, before this incident, this latest news where he may have died, I think it was the police chief of the LAPD said that they're reopening the investigation that led to his getting fired. Now, you
that
could
may
argue
have been to
that
pacify him.
Yeah, I mean, well, maybe, but let's assume that the media is going to take over and try to find out what happened. In a sense, that's good. On the other hand, is dying for it, is there a better way to maybe draw attention to it without resulting in killing people and killing yourself? Probably.
Yeah. I can understand. Of course, we talked about the fan club of the Aurora shooter. So, of course, anyone like this is going to have a fan club and become, a hero in some people's eyes.
You surprised about how this ended? If this is indeed how it ended?
No. I think this is how it would normally go down. They'd eventually find him and there'd be some type of shootout. He'd end up dead.
You didn't think it was likely he would be taken alive?
I really doubt it.
Particularly not after the 40 shots at the pickup truck, which wasn't even his.
I don't think he wanted to be taken alive.
The Senate has passed the Violence Against Women Act with no help from 22 Republican male senators. Here is a picture of those individuals. Marco Rubio, as I mentioned, is on that list. So is Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader. And, but this is about what we expect at this point. 78 to 22 it passed of those opposing the legislation. All 22 were Republican men. Every female senator supported the bill. Now, this bill, for people who don't know the history of it, it expired during the last Congress because of Republican opposition to some provisions that were in it, including that Native American, undocumented, and LGBT victims of domestic violence had some specific protections under that bill. The different versions approved by the House and by the Senate never were reconciled, so basically the bill just died without ever being passed last year. Now, two senators, Chuck Grassley and John Cornyn, both Republicans from Iowa and Texas, respectively, offered significant amendments to this bill. Grassley's amendment stripped all of the Native American, LGBT, and undocumented victim protections. That was voted down Thursday of last week. And Cornyn's amendment aimed to, it was basically just related to tribal lands, and that part failed on Monday. And it's incredible to me that it's almost like Native American women aren't even really considered humans like everybody else, according to these amendments. It's truly disgusting.
Yeah. But you know what? It passed. So we can be happy about that.
We can be happy about
Yeah.
that, but we can't be happy about the fact that Native American women have some of the highest domestic violence rates, sex trafficking rates, a lack of access to resources anywhere in the country. They need a bill like this more than anybody. And there are Republican men who specifically want to prevent this bill from including them. It's disgusting.
Right. I can't even begin to grasp the logic behind that. But
something about freedom, the deficit, and the rule of law. Is that about it, Natan?
Well, it seems kind of a perverse idea of freedom. I mean, we took their freedom historically, and now we're gonna take their freedom again away again. I guess. I mean, their logic is that somehow reservations should be able to do whatever they want. But what ends up happening is you get white men from outside of the tribe who marry these women, and they can't be tried for committing acts of violence against them. That's what this is trying to address.
Yeah, absolutely. President Obama, in his State of the Union address, as I mentioned earlier, suggested increasing the federal minimum wage to $9 an hour from the current rate of $7.25 an hour. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Let's declare that in the wealthiest nation on earth, no one who works full-time should have to live in poverty, and raise the federal minimum wage to $9 an hour.
A lot of people like that. A lot of people standing and clapping. Not John Boehner.
Get that done.
Yeah. I want to dive into the $9 an hour minimum wage a little bit, and I'm going to give you the numbers for this. And I am not making a case. I'm not making any opinion simply by giving you the numbers of what this works out to. Let's put this up in time. If we go from a $7.25 an hour to $9 an hour minimum wage, if you assume a full-time employee working 40 hours a week, 50 paid weeks per year, okay? At $7.25 an hour minus taxes, that's just under $13,000 a year net. Again, this is already taking taxes out, which is just over $1,000 a month. And at $9 an hour, taking out taxes, it's about $15,750 net. So this is an extra about $3,000, or about an extra $59 per working week. So now that we have the actual numbers in front of us, Louis, is this a lot the way Republicans are acting as if it is? Or is this really not a lot and maybe not even enough? We know that this wouldn't even really get us to 1968 minimum wage levels if you take into consideration inflation. So how are we to interpret this? How do you interpret the $9 an hour mark?
I mean, first of all, I think is an extra $3,000 going to really be the thing that helps these families get through? I can understand why Republicans would say this is going to hurt small business, but all they support is large business. So the whole thing is kind of confusing.
So there's a couple things to think about here. Number one is it's not necessarily about what $59 a week means to a person or a family, but it's more about an extra $3,000 every year that people working at minimum wage will most likely not save, but put right back into the economy. And the aggregate effect of that would be significant. Now let's play out the two options, right? The Republican idea is you raise the minimum wage, the company pays more but doesn't make any more. They have less money, so they hire less people. Unemployment goes up. Less people have jobs with which they make money to spend, so on and so forth. Now, option two is the Democratic idea, right? Which is that the company pays more. The employees have more money to spend, so they buy more stuff because these aren't people who are saving money for the most part, making companies more money so they can actually hire more people, so those people make more and they spend more and then they hire more, et cetera, et cetera. The reality is that neither of these systems, neither of these paradigms is completely accurate in a vacuum, right? We can all see how if you mandate the minimum wage is now $30 in this economy, it won't work. It just won't work.
But that's the exact type of straw man argument that is
going
to get us nowhere.
But hold on a second, Natan, but I'm not done. We can also all see how doing the Michelle Bachmann strategy of reducing to $2 an hour also won't work. In other words, the market, the idea that the market will just regulate the right wage is simply not feasible. So really, we just have to think critically about what combination of policies. Just debating the number, 9, 7.25, 30, or 2, just that is not alone, Natan, the solution, nor the problem.
Well, what needs to happen is not to set it at a particular number for the foreseeable future, but to just tie it to cost of living increases and inflation. I mean, what we're talking about is a minimum wage. We're not talking about a good wage or a great wage.
Right.
The minimum wage should provide for at least what the federal poverty line is, which it doesn't currently do.
Right.
But I think it's especially important to raise the minimum wage given that unions are being busted by right-to-work laws. So if you're not going to have unions and you're going to have fewer unions, You're basically not going to have a way to ensure that your workforce has the ability to enter the middle class and to pay for products, which is going to hurt the whole economy by reducing demand. So I think it's just basic logic that you need to at least provide a minimum wage that will get you at or above the poverty line.
I agree with Natan. And couldn't we just back up and say, well, shouldn't minimum wage at least reflect inflation over the past X number of years?
Which would be, I think, about 1070 right now.
I mean, come on. If that's not common sense, I don't know what is.
No question about it. I think the important thing is for people, I support this, and I actually think it should be inflation adjusted up to 1070. That being said, I just think that conversations which only look at hiring in the context of what the minimum wage is are not effective conversations. They're not really going to get to any solutions, and really solutions are what the focus should be on.
Agreed.
Facebook.com/David Pakman Show. Please give us a like on Facebook. A lot is going on there. You can also check out davidpakman.com/gear for all of our t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up sweatshirts made from 100% recycled materials. We'll take a break. Back after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
We've talked a little bit about the National Defense Authorization Act, also known as the NDAA. There is a new version which includes an amendment that would actually legalize the use of propaganda on the American public, according to Michael Hastings of BuzzFeed. The amendment was proposed by Mac Thornberry, a Republican from Texas, and by Adam Smith, a Democrat from Washington, and it passed in the House last week. It would basically nullify the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948, which specifically forbids information and psychological operations aimed at influencing U.S. opinion. Thornberry says the current law ties the hands of America's diplomatic officials, military, and others by inhibiting our ability to effectively communicate in a credible way. What this basically means is they want to be able to use these, they're called information operations, to target not only foreign audiences, which we know happens and people here don't care about quite as much, but also to target domestic audiences. We've seen this done in practice, right? In other words, just because this was kind of against the law, formally against the law, it still is done. Look at what happened with the bill of goods we were sold with the Iraq War, right? I mean, to say, well, it may not have been a formal government information operation. I would even argue with that. I mean, there was a decided effort, a concerted effort to convince people of a certain thing in order for them to support going into Iraq. It was very, very clear.
Right. I mean, partially that was the use of what they knew to be faulty information, right?
Right.
I mean, that's kind of, is lying the same as propaganda?
Well, let's see.
You know,
is lying the same as propaganda?
Is that the same as an information agenda? Or is it, I don't know.
I think it is, right? What do you think, Natan?
Well, it's difficult to say whether it should be a crime for politicians to lie. I mean, certainly there's a way of impeaching them, but on the other hand, if congressmen are in it with the president, then there's no way that that'll ever happen. So I don't know what to think about that.
If the NDAA goes into effect in its current form with this provision in it, the State Department and the Pentagon can basically go, they already manipulate mainstream media outlets and they do information campaigns. As we see on Fox News, they just repeat the Fox News talking points, or rather they repeat the Republican talking points, in many cases with the same typos, right? So we already have government and politicians influencing mainstream media. That we already have. But this provision would actually allow this to go even further and allow the government to create specific misinformation campaigns directly geared at the U.S. public without having to simply kind of run it through mainstream media. It really doesn't seem like that Smith-Mundt Act did much in the first place, right? I mean, look at the amount of propaganda that we've seen from the government since 1948.
Right. I don't think it really helped. I mean, I'm not worried about this. Not really. It's not like we're going to end up like North Korea. But at the same time, it seems unnecessary.
Natan, is it unnecessary or is it downright concerning?
I mean, I'm concerned about it. I don't know exactly what the repercussions would be, but it's certainly not good when there's a legal mechanism in place for misleading from the government's perspective.
That's my concern.
Yeah, but
the thing
we'll
is,
have to
some
see.
people will say, Natan, some people will say, and this goes for Lewis too, when somebody comes on this show and they say, well, listen, we need guns to protect ourselves from the possibility of the government becoming tyrannical. And we just say, come on, but that's not going to happen. It's not very likely. When's the last time that that's actually been an effective way of defending yourself from the government? Somebody could say, you know what, I don't really care about this because I just don't think it's very likely that the government's really going to turn us into North Korea. It's the same kind of argument, right?
I don't know about that. Maybe. I don't know.
I'm a little bit unsure about this because it seems to me like we already have a de facto propaganda machine. I mean, if you look at super PACs and the ads that they were running, just saying blatantly false things about Obama shipping Jeeps jobs overseas and all sorts of things, and
but
denying climate change.
That's like that was a campaign thing.
What about denying climate change? We have a political party that essentially rejects the consensus of science. I would say that that's a complete propaganda machine that's anti-facts.
That's true. I mean, is there added credibility because it's coming from a government source?
Not for a lot of people, no.
Right. I don't think so.
The Pope's resignation is linked to the sex abuse crisis, according to Mea Maxima Culpa director Alex Gibney. And this is interesting because we mentioned when we talked earlier in the week about the Pope resigning and it being the first Pope to resign in 600-something years, around 600 years. I said, I could imagine wanting to get out. Look at the whole pedophilia crisis that's going on. And Alex Gibney says that it's very strange. It's 2 days before Ash Wednesday. Because of the way the conclave works, it means no pope will probably reside over Easter Sunday Mass. You wonder if there is another shoe to drop. Now, he did the documentary Mea Maxima Culpa, Silence in the House of God. And it's about some of the current wave of accusations against the Catholic Church. And he is just being very straightforward here and saying this is about the sexual abuse scandal. This is about the cover-up, and this is about getting himself out of the way, essentially. I have no reason to contest this because it was the first thing that came to my mind. Is this evidence? Not really, but it's certainly not a surprise to me.
Yeah. You know what? He is 85 years old. The health issues I can understand. This pacemaker. There are talks of cancer, which I guess are not true. But popes just don't do this.
Remember that in his earlier capacity, when he was Cardinal Ratzinger, before he was Pope Benedict XVI, he was responsible for ordering all reports of sex abuse to go through his office at the Congregation of the Doctrine of Faith, where he ran that office from 01 to 05. So, yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised. The sexual abuse and molestation by priests is bad enough by far, but the persistent cover-up and hiding and shielding of the abusers it's really a double scandal that is really wrapped into one, and I don't think it's getting nearly the attention that it deserves.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to link this to anything. I mean, we know what he did. I think he's a despicable human being, and who knows? He's probably just getting out before things get real bad.
Let's take a break. We'll be back after this. I want to talk about a bunch of other stuff, including your voicemails, and we'll preview tomorrow's show. There's still a lot happening. It's way too early to change the channel or stop the podcast or turn your computer off, whatever it is you're doing.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Michigan's medical marijuana tax revenues exceed $10 million for 2012. They have collected more than $10 million in tax revenues from medical marijuana dispensaries, and since implementation in 2009, 344,000 original applications and renewals have been submitted. Now, of those, about 124,000 were active, 31,000 were denied, and the state has also licensed 26,000 caregivers who produce the drug, all of whom pay a fee. The DEA, as we know, says that marijuana is a Schedule I substance, which is reserved for drugs that have no medical value. However, we have seen so much information come out, including from the American Medical Association back in 2009, that marijuana should be rescheduled to allow more research into its properties, developing marijuana-based medication, so on and so forth. Now, there's an interesting study I want to tell you about, which is from the researchers at the University of Auckland. They found an unusually high number of stroke patients smoke marijuana. The problem with the study, and the study is notable because it's being pointed to by a lot of people who say medical marijuana actually it's harmful, it's not good. The problem is, and the researchers say this, but you won't hear this in the criticisms, that the researchers could not eliminate tobacco users from the test group of 160 stroke patients. And they noted that most of the people who tested positive for marijuana also smoked cigarettes, which we know doubles the risk of stroke for individuals, according to the National Stroke Association. So this is a classic example, Louis, of this kind of misinformation campaign around medical marijuana. And some people might think most of the arguments against it are based on morality, so-called morality arguments. But I think really most of the arguments are business arguments, where the potential of this as a medicine is so significant that the pharmaceutical industries only would want this if they can have kind of like exclusive rights to make money from it.
No doubt. And for a long time they have, in the form of THC pills, things extracted from marijuana. But the amount of revenue this can bring in for the states is incredible. And the amount of money that the cartels would be losing is staggering.
And think about the effect that this would have on gun violence related to drug deals, trafficking, a lot of the other general violence that is around the current way that drugs are trafficked in and out.
How much we save from incarcerating, drug offenders.
The effect on prisons. Prisons would be less crowded and presumably better because you wouldn't have nonviolent drug offenders mixed in there. I still do not understand how cigarettes can be legal, but marijuana is not.
Right.
Here's an idea for a story I got from Reddit. If bugs screamed before you stepped on them, if ants screamed when you were about to step on them, would you still do it? Why or why not? Now, I actually don't step on bugs on purpose as it is. I actually try to avoid them. Accidentally, I'm sure I step on countless bugs, including really little ones that are hard to see.
What if they're in your house?
What's that?
What if they're in your house?
I take them outside.
Really?
Unless it's a spider, then I kind of just crush it with a paper towel and flush it. So in general, I don't go around looking to step on bugs, but if bugs screamed when you were about to step on them, would that change your view on stepping on bugs?
I'm not sure.
Natan?
I'd have to experience that.
Almost certainly.
Really?
Yeah, I think that if I heard a little, like every time I was about to, or I was about to, or just did that, I think I would stop doing it.
Now, what about crickets? Crickets already chirp. Some people like the noise, some people don't, and we're not going around trying to attack them. So maybe that's a factor.
Well, crickets stop when you get close to them.
So it's a little bit of a different scenario.
Yeah.
I would slowly lower my foot to hear the screams, and then at the last second, I would stop, look really closely, and say, "You may live."
The benevolent David Pakman.
Dave would start waterboarding them.
Seriously, though, Louis, you don't think it would have any effect on you?
It might. It very well could. Yeah. I just, when you've been stepping on bugs your whole life, I mean, would now, if the yelling were to happen now, would that change?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So you purposely step on bugs?
No, I don't go outside and, if there's a bug in my house, I'll kill it.
Right. Okay.
But
do you humanely do it?
I don't look at, if I see a bug crawling across the ground and I'm walking outside, I will try to avoid it.
What about worms?
I will try to avoid it.
Natan?
Although I do go fishing, so, I'm putting them on hooks too.
Anything else you want to add, Natan?
Well, there is something to be said when you squash like a cockroach and it instantly dies. That's not too much different than a person instantly dying from a gunshot to the head, for example. I'm not saying that I support gunshots to the head or any of this, but what I'm saying is it's not like the insect is necessarily suffering in that, split second that it realizes it's being crushed until it gets crushed.
Okay, very good.
Don't you think?
Yeah, there's you're onto something there.
I put all my weight on a cockroach once and it was still alive.
219-2-DAVID P is our voicemail number. Let's listen to a couple of voicemails. Take a listen to this.
Hi, I have a couple of questions for Gautam. First one, Gautam, if there was a Jewish pope, who would it be? And number two, can you please tell me a little bit more about the Pakman Matamidi plan? Sounds very interesting.
Okay, I don't know what that second part is, but Natan, who would be a Jewish pope?
I don't know, maybe Chuck Schumer? Or maybe Bill Maher. He's half Jewish. I don't know. I think that if you're going to ask me who the pope should be, no matter what demographic group he belongs to, it should be an atheist pope.
All right.
I think Woody Allen would have to be
I was going to
Jewish
say
pope.
Woody Allen. That's so weird that you said that. I was going to say the same thing. Let's take a listen to one more voicemail here very quickly.
Hey, David Lewis and Natan. This is Justin from Indiana. Hey, you just had the second or junior question on the episode I just listened to. Heck, I don't even know which one it was. I have a son. He's 4. I named him the second. I'm from Indiana. I didn't want to name him Junior. Didn't want to sound redneck, but and probably do right now anyway. I looked it up and did some research, and my grandmother, she's very versed in proper English and terminology that we use in these instances.
The David Pakman Show.
You're supposed to name, use the second whenever you name your son after your brother.
Right. So that's the idea, Lewis. If it's second, if it's not directly for the father, we got the resolution. That's it for today. We'll talk to you tomorrow.